You've heard us talk about hormone therapy by Happy Mammoth many times by now. It's a supplement that helps women maintain optimal hormone levels with over 50,000 glowing reviews from women all over the globe. 98% say that they would recommend it to friends and family. And that's why we're recommending it to you. Now, we can take those hormone harmony results even further by pairing it with Happy Mammoth's probiotic collagen protein. It helps restore gut lining integrity, promoting overall hormone balance. It also helps relieve occasional bloating, reduce sugar cravings, and helps you feel satisfied longer. Because your gut directly affects your hormones, improving gut health can amplify your hormone harmony results so you feel like yourself again. Happy Mammoth is dedicated to making women's lives easier, and that means using only science-backed ingredients that have been proven to work for women. They make no compromise when it comes to quality, and it shows. Right now, you can try prebiotic collagen protein and hormone harmony risk-free and get 15% off your entire order with code MurderDiaries at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use code MurderDiaries for 15% off today.
Josie, it's your new nanny, Polly.
The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, a Hulu original.
What do you know about her?
Now streaming.
You think if you try hard enough, you can stop bad things from happening, but you can't.
Good help.
Get out!
Is hard to find.
You made me do this.
A Hulu original. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Rated R. Now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundled subscribers. Terms apply.
It's Huluween on Disney Plus. Watch frightful family favorites like Hocus Pocus and Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas on Disney Plus.
I am the Pumpkin King.
Then take the terror to 10 with a thrilling new remake of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Scream, and more with Huluween on Disney Plus. All these and more screaming this Halloween season with Hulu on Disney Plus. Bundle subscription required. 18 plus. Select Hulu content via Disney Plus. Additional content on Hulu app. Terms apply. Visit disneyplus.com/Hulu for details.
Welcome back to the Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
Make sure if you want to listen ad-free that you head over to patreon.com/the Murder Diaries pod or search the Murder Diaries ad-free on Spotify. Also, please make sure to leave us a positive review on Apple and subscribe on YouTube and all of our socials. It really helps us keep the Murder Diaries going. On April 26, 2010, 16-year-old Ali Lowitzer got off her school bus near her house in Spring, Texas. For the first time ever, her mom had given her permission to walk to the restaurant she worked at nearby to pick up her paycheck. It was just a 10-minute walk along a main road. Allie never made it to the restaurant, and she hasn't been seen since. Despite several promising leads, Allie's case remains unsolved, and her parents refuse to let her name be forgotten. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Alexandria Joy Lowitzer, known to her friends and family as Allie, was born on February 3rd, 1994, to Joanne and John Lowitzer. Joanne also had a son named Mason from a previous relationship, but she and John raised him together from when he was a toddler. Mason was just 2 years older than Allie, but Joanne said that the two got along pretty well for being so close in age. She admitted that they had their share of sibling rivalry and bickering, but it was always petty and none of the arguments ever lasted. The Lowitzer family was close-knit, and Joanne especially put a lot of emphasis on the importance of family. In 2008, Joanne and John separated. Though John no longer lived with them, Joanne continued to make it a priority that both Mason and Allie got to spend time with him. Both John and Joanne worked at shipping logistics companies in Houston, Texas. Joanne, Allie, and Mason lived in a suburb northwest of Houston, in Spring, Texas, where Allie attended Spring High School. As Allie hit her teenage years, her father said that she went through a couple of different phases with her style. Initially, it was a girly phase with hair bows and multicolored rubber bracelets stacked on her forearms. Then, suddenly, everything was black. Black clothes, black makeup, brown hair dyed black, and a slightly more rebellious attitude. Joanne told Disappeared that, quote, once she learned how to put that black eyeliner on, it was there to stay. And I think this is something that so many families and people can relate to, especially those that might be a little bit older or a little bit younger than Allie. There was definitely the emo phase going around. Black eyeliner is so fitting. So this isn't necessarily a sign of anything going wrong or anything like that. It's very likely just a teenager expressing herself. After all, John describes Allie as fun-loving, energetic, and a girl who loved reading. She used to play softball, but once she discovered her passion for art in high school, it seemed like Allie put all of her sports efforts towards her creativity. Joanne knew that Allie wanted to continue to develop her skills in art and wanted to follow that passion after high school into college. She had a lovely singing voice and even sang the national anthem at a local rodeo. Joanne was exploding with pride for her daughter that day. In a Facebook post after Allie's disappearance, Joanne wrote a short passage describing her daughter, capturing her in a way that really only a mother can. Allie's my girl. She's beautiful inside and out. I used to tell her that all the time when she was sad or would cry and someone was bullying her and would say something ugly. Allie is my girl. Her eyes would shine bright when she laughs. She has her daddy's eyes, sometimes blue, sometimes gray, and sometimes somewhere in between. No matter what color they are always beautiful. Allie is my girl. Her love for animals is deep. Her compassion for other creatures always touched my heart. She would always try to help a stray in need. Allie is my girl. Her artistic ability always amazed me. She spray painted the entire side of her grandmother's garage to look like a tropical sunset. It's beautiful, just like her. Allie is my girl. Her voice is beautiful. She was always embarrassed to sing in front of anyone, but with some encouragement, she sang a song at the 8th grade pop show, Journey to the Past from the animated movie Anastasia. Allie is my girl. Her sense of humor wasn't always a contagious bubble of joy, but get her going and she shouldn't let it go. She loved to make fun of the way I messed up words, like instead of don't, out my mouth came donut, LOL. Allie is my girl. Her hair is beautiful. When she was small, it was sandy blonde with ringlet curls, and as she grew into a teen, she liked to change her hair color and style quite often. Her last style, she cut it and colored it herself. She would make a good beautician. My girl Allie is gone. She vanished one afternoon after stepping off her school bus, April 26, 2010. My girl Allie is gone. We have not heard from her and no one has seen her. My girl Allie is gone. I miss the shine in her eyes and her love for animals. My girl Allie is gone. I miss her artwork and the sound of her voice. My girl Allie is gone. I miss her making fun of me and her beautiful hair. I miss my girl Allie. My life is incomplete without her. When Allie loved something, her passion for it wasn't a secret. Just like her love for art, her love for animals ran deep. In 2017, Joanne told Dateline about a memory she had of Allie when she was in 5th grade. She said that John was preparing to use their outdoor grill to make burgers when he found a bird's nest inside. Allie was quick to take ownership of the nest and the eggs inside. Quote, she'd check every day on those eggs. She'd always be out there watching them. Joanne also recalled Allie calling her one day at work, petrified, because a snake had gotten into the grill. The eggs had hatched and Allie needed to make sure the babies were safe. Joanne told Allie to go get a neighbor to check on the birds. Unfortunately, it was too late. Allie was devastated. With John's help, she made sure that there were no spaces left on the grill for a bird to enter. Joanne went on to tell Dateline further that her daughter said it wasn't fair that it happened to those baby birds. She didn't want it to ever happen again.
Allie had a kind, generous, loving heart, and that was something that didn't change, though her hair color and clothing choices sometimes did. And like most teenagers, Allie loved to sleep. Joanne said that she'd stay under her covers until the very last minute, until she had to get up and get ready so she wouldn't miss the school bus. And on Monday, April 26, 2010, it was no different.
On that Monday morning, April 26, 2010, Joanne woke up 16-year-old Allie for school. Allie waited as usual until she had no time left to spare. Her mother heard her getting ready then at 7:30 a.m. and heard Allie yell, "Bye, Mom," followed by the front door shutting. Allie's school bus picked her up near the family home and dropped her off in the same place in the afternoon. Around 2:30 p.m., Allie called her mother from her cell phone to tell her that she had forgotten her house keys. Joanne called Mason, who was 18 at the time and had already graduated the year before. She wanted to let him know that he needed to leave the door unlocked for his sister before he left, and Mason agreed. Allie also asked her mom if she could walk to her job at the Burger Barn before going home. Allie had been working at the Burger Barn for about 5 weeks. It was her first job, and she seemed to enjoy it. She told her mom that she wanted to pick up her paycheck, but also see if she could get in another shift that night. Joanne quickly said no, though. It was a 10-minute walk from the house, but Allie had never walked there by herself. Normally, Joanne, John, or Mason would give her a ride to and from work. Joanne worried because the route to Burger Barn ran along a main road called Treshwig Road, and it didn't have a sidewalk. Joanne told Allie to just head home straight from the bus stop, but Allie wouldn't take no for an answer. Like most teenagers, she knew how to press her mom's buttons, and eventually Joanne gave in and told Allie that fine, she could walk to Burger Barn after she got off the bus. She made Allie promise to text her when she got there and let her know if she was going to work a shift that night or be walking right back home. At 5:30 p.m., Joanne arrived home from work to find the house empty. She wasn't too surprised that Allie wasn't there, but she was frustrated because she hadn't gotten a text from Allie that said she was working, but she must have been working at Burger Barn, right? She must have picked up that shift. Joanne texted Allie and asked her what time she was going to be done with her shift so she could come pick her up, but Allie didn't respond. Joanne still wasn't quite panicking here. She assumed that Allie probably just wasn't allowed to have her cell phone with her while she was working, and just before 9 o'clock p.m., Joanne, still not having heard from Allie, decided to make the short drive up to Burger Barn. When she pulled up to the front of the small restaurant, which was seated in the middle of a line of shops in a strip mall type area, her stomach dropped. The restaurant was obviously closed, with the lights off, chairs stacked, nobody inside. That's when Joanne knew that something was really wrong. This is when she starts panicking. She calls John and she tells him what happened and that she couldn't get in touch with or find Allie. John told her that it was probably okay and maybe Allie had gotten a ride home with friends or maybe her phone had died. He was trying to stay calm and keep Joanne calm, but Joanne knew something wasn't right. John suggested that she call some of Allie's friends and see if they knew where she was. She took John's advice and began phoning all of Allie's friends, but none of them were with her or knew where she was. After no luck over the phone with any of her friends, Joanne decided to go over to DJ's house. Now, DJ was 16 years old and was more than friends with Allie. He'd even been over at their house the day before. He and Allie had been out front most of the day skateboarding and just enjoying each other's company. Joanne thought that he seemed like a really sweet kid. When she got to DJ's house, her concern over Allie only increased. DJ said that he'd been also calling and texting Allie all afternoon, but had gotten no response. Joanne drove around the neighborhood looking for Allie or any sign of her, but she came up empty. By 11 p.m., Joanne made it back to her house, hoping she'd find her teenage daughter safe and sound in her bedroom, but Allie wasn't there. She would later tell Dateline that at that point, she felt out of options. I knew deep down in my gut that night that something wasn't right. I had no idea what to do about it other than phone police, really, but I knew that something was very wrong right away. Just before midnight, a patrol officer from the Harris County Constable's office responded to the family home. By then, John had also arrived at the house and was doing his best to reassure Joanne and himself that Allie was okay. The patrol officer seemed unconcerned. She asked Joanne if she could take a look at Allie's bedroom, and they agreed. She then asked Joanne and John about the events of the day, if they were sure that there hadn't been an argument or something that might have caused Allie to run off. Joanne reassured her that no, nothing like that had happened, and there was no way that Allie just ran off on her own. The officer told them that Allie would probably be back soon and for them to call the constable's office in the morning when she came back. Joanne then followed up with a question of her own. What should they do if she doesn't come home? The officer repeated to just call them in the morning. Both parents were shocked at the lack of response and concern from law enforcement. John suggested that maybe Allie was just being a rebellious teen and that the officer was right. She'd come back in the morning. While they tried to brainstorm where Allie might be or who she might be with, Mason, Allie's older brother, took several of his friends out to drive around the neighborhood to search for Allie, but they couldn't find her. John eventually went back to his house to get some sleep, but Joanne stayed up all night, hoping that Allie would just walk through the door. Around 5 a.m., Joanne called John and told him that Allie still hadn't come home.
It had been 18 hours since anyone had heard from Allie, and Joanne was in full panic mode, despite the less than concerned response she received from law enforcement. She later told KHOU News, "We know that she wouldn't go absolutely dark and not contact anyone. I'm like, Gosh, why hasn't anything else happened? Where could she be? Is she still alive? It's truly a mom's worst nightmare.
At 9 a.m., now Tuesday, April 27th, Joanne had called police again to tell them that Allie still hadn't come home. John told Disappeared that investigators spent a lot of their time trying to convince him and Joanne that Allie had just run away, and that they spent just as much time trying to convince investigators that they knew their daughter hadn't run away. Joanne said that if for some reason Allie had run away, she would have found things missing from her bedroom, but everything Allie would have taken with her was still there. Her makeup, her cell phone charger, her money, all of it was still sitting in her bedroom. They, of course, let the constable's office know that Allie hadn't made it home, and the office responded by suggesting that maybe Allie wasn't being truthful with Joanne about where she wanted to go after school, that she actually didn't plan on going to Burger Barn. With that, Joanne and John took the search into their own hands and started figuring out what they could do to verify Allie's movements that day. John tracked down the school bus company and found out that they had cameras on Allie's school bus. They showed John the footage from the day Allie disappeared, which showed her getting out of school, onto the school bus, through the whole bus route, and then getting off the school bus at her regular stop. It should also be noted that John was easily able to validate that his daughter had been on the bus that afternoon and had gotten off just like normal, with timestamp receipts to back it up. On the video, John notices that there were two boys who got off the stop with Allie. He and Joanne recognized one of the boys as a neighbor and quickly contacted him to see what he knew about where Allie had gone that afternoon. He said that instead of Allie walking down the street with them like normal, she turned around and started to walk towards the neighborhood exit, which made sense because she was headed towards Burger Barn. John's next stop was the Burger Barn. He spoke to the owner and asked if his daughter had ever made it to the restaurant that day. The owner said that he hadn't seen Allie that day or since, and that he even still had her paycheck. As John left Burger Barn, he noticed a gas station sitting across the street. He took a chance to ask the gas station if they had surveillance footage that he could check. From their camera, they were able to see the entire four-way red light in front of the gas station and the strip mall across the street, including the Burger Barn. John scoured the footage, but Allie never passed in front of that camera. This confirms the Burger Barn owner's account that Allie never arrived there that day. It's now been 24 hours since anyone has heard from Allie. John and Joanne continued to call her cell phone and leave voicemails and text her with no response. The phone was going straight to voicemail. That's when Joanne remembered that AT&T had an app on their family plan that had GPS tracking and allowed them to see where each family member's phone was. The last place it tracked Allie's phone was just on the outskirts of the neighborhood.
Days ran together as Joanne and John continued to search for any information as to where Allie was and what had happened to her that day. She'd been missing for a week when Joanne and John were able to give the constable's office all of the information they'd collected, including the security footage from the gas station and the Burger Barn. Law enforcement, on the other hand, maintained their classification for Allie as a runaway.
As business owners ourselves, Natalie and I know how intimidating it can be to start your own business. You have to wear so many hats and make so many decisions. If that sounds like something you're struggling with right now, Shopify can help you. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses, from household names like Mattel, Gymshark. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates, and Shopify actually helps you build the most beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. It really accelerates your content creation. It's packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and you can even enhance your product's photography. You can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. You can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. Shopify is your little commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing your inventory to complicated stuff like international shipping and processing returns and so much more. If you are ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/murderdiaries. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries. Shopify.com/murderdiaries. Despite their determination that Allie would eventually return on her own, the constable's office sent officers back to the Lowitzer's home to look around Allie's room again. They found some of her journals, one which included an entry that alluded to plans to run away from home. They felt that this fully confirmed their belief that Allie left home on her own. John and Joanne told law enforcement that Allie's writing didn't always reflect her true intentions. John said that she'd make up stories, writing fictional accounts in her journal. That was just part of her creative nature. Despite Allie having no history of running away, the constable's office felt even more comfortable now resting their investigation on Allie being a runaway. However, they at least updated her status to endangered runaway. Endangered runaway meant that someone had left on their own volition, but without warning, and that dangerous issues could be at play, like possible mental illness or potential for suicide. John was adamant that the possibility of Allie hurting herself never crossed his mind. To him, his daughter was absolutely not capable of doing that. With no real assistance from law enforcement, Joanne and John found help with the Laura Recovery Center, an organization that helps with searching and locating missing and abducted children. Joanne felt much relief once they got involved. It finally seemed like someone else cared that Allie was missing. They were able to organize a more formal search. They created official missing persons flyers with Allie's picture and photos of what she was known to last be wearing, along with an offer of a $25,000 reward for information about Allie's disappearance. They printed off thousands of these flyers and put them anywhere they could. Joanne was shocked and incredibly moved by what the community did for Allie.
By the third week of Allie's disappearance, the ground searches that had been conducted with the assistance of the Laura Center had attracted the attention of the media, and by late May, Allie's case was transferred to the Harris County Sheriff's Department. Within hours, homicide detectives were knocking on the Lowitzers' doors, trying to find out how they could help.
Joanne told Disappeared that once the Sheriff's Department got involved, it was kind of like they had to do everything all over again. They had to share all the information and evidence they found again. The homicide detectives began their investigation where most investigations begin, with the people who were closest to the victim. In this case, that's Allie's family. Detectives started by interrogating John for hours. Joanne said that John wouldn't even tell her some of the questions they asked him because he knew they'd upset her. When detectives asked John if he thought that Allie was dead or alive, he had no idea how to answer. He explained regretfully to investigators that since he and Joanne had separated 2 years prior, Allie had been really angry with him. She took the separation incredibly hard, and she seemed to blame her dad. Things had recently started to get better, though, between John and Allie, and then, all of a sudden, she's gone. Next on their list to talk to was Allie's older brother, Mason. They interrogated him for several hours. They asked him to explain his exact movements during the time that his sister had disappeared. Mason told him that he was at home, heard the bus coming down the street, but that Allie never came to the house. He left home shortly after and never saw her. Joanne was understandably upset to watch her ex-husband and her son be questioned so thoroughly by investigators. She knew, though, that they had to do it, but she watched it break both of them. Both Mason and John took polygraph tests and were found not to be deceptive. Detectives said that John was fully cleared of any involvement, but Mason couldn't be 100% cleared. They clarified that they didn't suspect him of anything necessarily, but that they couldn't fully and completely clear him of any wrongdoing. Authorities said that after the interrogation and polygraph test, Mason had refused to speak any more with law enforcement or the media, but continued to adamantly deny having anything to do with his sister's disappearance. Detectives scoured through the family's phone records, and Joanne was surprised to learn that she wasn't the last person that Allie communicated with before she disappeared. Around 2:50 p.m., just a few minutes before she got off the school bus, but after she'd gotten off the phone with Joanne, Allie texted a friend from Spring High School, an older boy named Jay. The two had been friends for more than a year, so he wasn't a stranger to Joanne. Allie was asking him in her text to come over and hang out after school. Because he was the last person that Allie had spoken to before she disappeared, investigators were eager to speak with him. Detectives located him at his home, and he told them that he'd never met up with Allie that day, that he had had other plans. Jay had that alibi, and investigators were able to easily mark him off their suspects list.
Though the family was thankful that it seemed like law enforcement was finally looking for Allie and finally treating her like someone who hadn't just run off. They wanted as much help as they could get. So they hired a private investigator, Max Stanford. They did this within the first few weeks of Allie's disappearance, hoping that he could find something that they'd missed.
2 years after Allie's disappearance, Sanford learned about a case that was unfolding that he thought could be related to Allie's disappearance. In August of 2012, a Louisiana college student, Mickey Shenick, was abducted and her body was found in a remote wooded area. Mickey, at the time 22, had been riding her bike home from a friend's house around 2 a.m. when a registered sex offender, Brandon, rear-ended Mickey on her bike. Brandon then reportedly offered Mickey a ride and she accepted. Once Mickey was in his white pickup truck, he shot and killed her. What stood out to Sanford was a white pickup truck. He told KPEL News, "We have 2 tips come in saying 2 separate times, both of them saying a white domestic Chevy truck with a male driver trying to lure in Allie on the side of the street where she went missing." So from there, everything just kind of started falling into place. I feel really confident that we have a huge link here. Reportedly, these tips both had been partial license plate numbers that Sanford said closely matched the plate on Brandon's truck. Brandon had ties to the Spring community with relatives in the area. After he had murdered Mickey, Brandon dumped his white truck about 50 miles away from the Lowitzer home, burning the vehicle entirely. Though everything linking Brandon to Allie's disappearance was circumstantial, John and Joanne couldn't leave a possible lead without being fully investigated. Detectives questioned Brandon in prison, who, of course, denied knowing Allie or having anything to do with her disappearance. Detectives were able to get in touch with Brandon's previous employer, who ended up providing proof that he was offshore working on diesel engines when Allie went missing. There was no way he would have been able to get back to shore and abduct Allie. Upon hearing that Brandon had been cleared of any involvement, Joanne had mixed feelings. She was relieved that this convicted murderer hadn't come in contact with her daughter, but also disappointed that they weren't any closer to finding Allie. The Lowitzers, heartbroken and desperate for answers, hired another private investigator named Amber. In 2014, Joanne was really surprised when she started meeting with Amber. She said that Amber was the only one who really seemed to be looking for a live Allie, not her remains. She was the only one who brought up and looked into the possibility of Allie having been a victim of human trafficking. Houston was and still is a huge hub for human trafficking because of its close proximity to the U.S.-Mexico border. It has multiple interstates and an international airport and the second busiest seaport in the U.S. It was a very big possibility that Allie could have been a victim of a trafficker. Younger girls, like Allie's age, are typically targeted through people around their own age who have been recruited by the traffickers.
One piece of information that really stuck with Joanne and John as pointing to a possible human trafficking situation was Allie's cell phone. After Allie spoke with her mom, it was just 10 minutes before her phone was shut off, at exactly 2:54 that afternoon. In John's opinion, that means that whoever took her was a professional, that they knew what they were doing.
In October of 2012, Joanne received a phone call from a woman in Columbus, Ohio. The woman said that she'd seen Allie's missing persons website and thought that she'd seen Allie at a recent church function for homeless people. The woman described Allie that she was really quiet and that she'd got a weird feeling, like the girl was being forced to be quiet. Something felt very off to her. Amber, the family's PI, immediately contacted local law enforcement in Columbus to let them know the situation. She then traveled to Ohio and started working with the police, which this ultimately led her going undercover for them to gain access to different drug houses and brothels. Amber said that it felt like she was living a double life and had become another person in her search for Allie. Over the course of 4 weeks, she posed as someone who lived on the streets who was looking to sell sex or buy drugs, hoping that she could track down information about Allie. At one point, she was talking to someone that she referred to in the Disappeared episode as a pedophile. This pedophile was an undercover police officer who was posing as a predator, but didn't know that Amber was also working with police. Amber shows this officer, who again she didn't know was undercover at the time, a photo of Allie and asked if he knew her. He said, "Oh yeah, that's Allie Cat." And he knew that Allie was from Texas, but said he had no idea she was missing. Amber was surprised to hear the officer refer to her as Alley Cat because that was one of her actual nicknames at home. Amber was then directed to a sex worker who had worked with detectives before. Amber showed this woman the same photo of Allie, and she, along with another sex worker, immediately recognized her and referred to her again as Alley Cat. They described her and gave personal details about her, including a scar that she had on her forehead. In exchange for money, the women offered to take Amber to Allie so that she could see her for herself. Amber went with the women to several houses that were known as drug dens. There were multiple women and girls inside these houses that were under the influence of drugs and assumed to be sex workers or trafficking victims. As Amber walked through one of the houses, she saw a young girl who looked exactly like the photos she had of Allie. She felt confident that this was the girl she'd been searching for, but Amber said that she had, quote, no way to access her. By no way to access her, we think what Amber's saying here is that she didn't have a way to safely speak with this girl to see if it was Ali Lowitzer and then safely remove her from this house without, number one, blowing her cover and possibly endangering this girl. With that in mind, Amber returned to Texas with hopeful news to share with the Lowitzers. When she told them that people referred to the girl as Alley Cat, Joanne was shocked. That was her daughter's nickname. Regarding the scar they described on the girl's forehead, John confirmed that Allie did have a chickenpox scar between her eyes. Amber told KHOU News that, quote, we know this girl exists that resembles Allie. We know that she's being prostituted out, but we cannot say that it is our Allie until we get our hands on her, end quote. In December of 2014, John and Joanne flew to Columbus with Amber, full of hope that they might be returning to Texas with their daughter, or at least with more information than they had. Like they felt when their former PI was investigating the possible connection with Allie and Mickey Shanick's murder, John and Joanne realized that it was a long shot, but they refused to leave any tip uninvestigated or any stone unturned. The Lowitzers met with Columbus investigators and, along with Amber, came up with a plan to rescue the girl that they believed to be Allie. Amber brought all of the findings from her time spent undercover to law enforcement, which gave them enough to obtain a warrant for the house. John and Joanne returned to Texas while Amber stayed in Ohio and prepared to assist with the raid of the home. In January of 2013, Amber re-entered the drug den that she'd seen the girl resembling Allie inside weeks earlier, this time with the SWAT team around the corner ready to go. Amber wore a wire and posed as a madam, planning to offer to buy the young girl from the people in the house. Through Amber's wire, police heard confirmation that some sort of deal had been made, and they made their move into the house. SWAT made several arrests that night for promoting prostitution, along with the possession of illegal drugs and weapons. They rescued 8 women who had been trafficked and forced into the sex trade, but the girl who resembled Allie was not one of them. The Lowitzers were crushed. They tried not to let their hopes get too high, but they couldn't avoid it. Amber remained adamant that she'd seen Allie that night. It was possible that the people who ran the operation had been tipped off before the raid and moved her. One of the detectives with the Harris County Sheriff's Department said that Allie's fingerprints had been entered into several databases, but never alerted with a match. He believed that if Allie was being trafficked, it was likely that she would have encountered law enforcement at some point and possibly even arrested, which would have shown as a match for her fingerprints. Allie's missing persons case has gone cold, despite Joanne and John continuing to advocate to the best of their abilities to ensure that their daughter's name is not forgotten. Joanne told Click 2 Houston News that she is certain someone knows something about where Allie is, saying, how can someone live with this information for almost 14 years and not come forward? I plead, just tell someone who will tell someone else. We just want her home, no matter her condition, because the probability of her being alive is slim. When I talk about her, I try not to dwell on whether she was or is, but it's a struggle. Deep down, I know she's likely not alive anymore. At the time of her disappearance, 16-year-old Ali Lowitzer was 5'2" and 145 pounds. She was wearing a white t-shirt or spaghetti strap top with a gray hooded zip-up sweatshirt, black and white skinny jeans, and black sneakers. She had a blue LG AT&T slide-up cell phone and a multicolored checkered backpack with a dark-colored strap. Allie had blue eyes and brown hair that had been dyed dark red. Her nicknames are Allie, Alex, and AJ. At the time of her disappearance, she had pierced ears and a nose piercing and had pink braces on her teeth. As of this episode airing, Allie would be 31 years old. If you have any information about her disappearance, please contact the Harris County Sheriff's Office at 731-221-6000.
And that concludes today's case. As always, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, Mondays, we dive into pop culture with unscripted chats and deep dives. And Thursdays, we cover ethical true crime cases. You can follow us on social media to stay connected at the Murder Diaries Pod. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and basically everywhere else you scroll. And until next episode,
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.